Welcome everyone. This is ArcGIS StoryMaps tips for developers. Okay, and as I was talking to you earlier, so most of you are familiar with StoryMaps. Let me just introduce. So my name is Satya. I'm one of the people who founded this product. I've also done other things at Esri. I've been with Esri for 19 years now. So created lots of things along the way. And I have the pleasure of presenting this session with my esteemed colleague, Stephen over here. He's also a veteran in our team, and he leads our development efforts and helps us out. We also have Quan here, one of our senior developers. And yeah, we are all excited to talk to you today about StoryMaps. It's a very simple agenda. I've been playing it around. We're not going to go through all the things. We have a few things planned, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into each one of them. Stephen will do most of the talking, but I'll just come in between and then present a few topics. Oh, so before we get started, as I was telling earlier, if you're not familiar with StoryMaps, we highly recommend you get familiar with StoryMaps. It's a very popular tool to tell digital stories. That means, if you're thinking of a blog, if you're thinking of a website, you're thinking of something to put your GIS work out there, you definitely need to look at StoryMaps first. We have done all the work for you. All you have to do is use it. So you can create long-form stories. You can create collections. You can create themes to make it look nice. And very recently, this February, we have launched something called as briefings, which is what this presentation is all about. It's a presentation format because we saw that StoryMaps was used in a lot of projectors, in a lot of conferences, in a lot of meeting rooms. It's actually a scrolly telling format. It's made for reading. It's not made for presentation. So, but we did recognize that people love it. So we said, why make you guys struggle, right? We'll actually create a format just made for presentations. We can keep talking about this a lot. We have made so many advances here. By the way, this presentation is going to look great both on your phone and the biggest projector you can find. The text, the spacing, it's a different way of actually presenting information. And you're going to see a lot of storytelling blocks that you like and love get adapted to this format in a way that is actually quite friendly to the presentation format. And that's the reason you should be using a presentation versus a story. Okay, take it away.
All right, so let's get started. So as Satya was mentioning earlier, at this point in time, we don't really fully see StoryMaps as a developer product. You're not creating custom blocks, applications, things like that. However, it's something we're thinking about. When you look at StoryMaps and you kind of compare it on a spectrum, if you have, say, Instagram over here and Photoshop over here, we kind of see StoryMaps sitting a little bit closer to the Instagram side. We want the ability to create a story to be as simple as possible. We always want to say the hardest part about building a story is kind of thinking what that story actually is. But once you have that story concept, that storyboard concept, building it into the platform should be as simple as possible. And we do put a lot of constraints along our story builder for the fact of we want your story to always shine. There's constraints in the theme to make sure your story always looks great. All your headers are consistent sizes and colors across the theme. It's really easy to apply a beautiful story across your entire template, quickly change it to fit organization themes or other applications that you might have for your story. But at the same time, we also want to semi-constrain that storytelling process. You don't have all the bells and whistles you might have with some other applications within the ArcGIS Online platform. But that's a good thing, because a lot of the readers for your stories are not technical experts. A dashboard's great when you have a subject matter expert who can sit there for 30 minutes, digest the data, figure out what's important. Now we're seeing that a lot of users are spending upwards of 3, 5, 10 minutes on a story, which is huge if you consider the web for public users coming in. But if you have a long story to tell, a lot of complex mapping data, other multimedia files and videos and large text, how do you tell that story in a way that they can take away an action item from 3 to 5 minutes, right? So that's the kind of the power of StoryMaps, is digesting your data in such a way, telling that story, building it up as an author in a way that you can lead your reader through that story that they can do. So with those constraints, we've also constrained the builder a little bit, but we do have some power user tips and tricks we want to show that's maybe a little bit more hidden in the builder interface. You've got to dive into either advanced settings or have more experience that we don't document as much that we want to showcase today. So we're going to start with a lot of different demos today. We'll start very simple of just some power tips in the builder, go more complex of if you do have a developer background and you want to do some custom embeds and opportunities there. And then at the end, we'll go even deeper of how to actually automate your stories. And then a look at road ahead of how we're thinking we can make StoryMaps into more of a developer-friendly product. Not a full developer product, but how can you work with our stories in such a way that give you more capabilities to enhance and really tell that story that you want to tell. So we're going to start with a couple tips in the builder. So 5 quick tips starting off. Sometimes it's really useful to jump from one section to another section. Maybe you have a table of contents. Maybe you have not a linear story, and you want the user to choose where they want to go next. So we have this option here where you can have links to other headers in your story. So in this case, I can just highlight the text, click this heading. This was available for a long time if you knew kind of the backgrounds of identifying the hash on the link. However, we've exposed it into a much more public, easy, friendly way to add this link. So I can just click on number 4. I now have that link, and I can jump right there. So number 4, story languages.
Does this translate from French? Is that yes?
Yeah. So story languages. So like I said, StoryMaps is has a worldwide audience. And so you might be writing your story in a different language than your reader, right? Most modern platforms today, modern browsers today have a built-in automatic translation tool that if you set your story language correctly, so in this case, maybe your story is written in French and your reader's in English, right? So they come to your story, we set the appropriate locale tags on your story, and the browser is going to prompt them, hey, do you want to translate your story? All the text within your story, map pop-ups, all that will automatically translate for you. So you do that quickly by going to the story settings, and then you quickly just add what your language is. We're going to continue in the builder to set your preferred language so you can read the interface. And then once you publish your story, the entire story will be translated to your story language. And so the entire website translates at once. All right, number 3, author analytics. So by default, we do provide simple view counts of all your stories. You can see how popular your story has been, how many times it's been viewed from the beginning of the publish date. However, a lot of organizations are asking for more complex analytics. How many people are viewing the story? How many unique views are coming? Where are users coming from? Did news sites or other organizations post a link to my story and I want to see the referrer for it? What types of devices are users looking at? Are they coming from smartphones? Are they coming from tablets? Do I need to making sure I optimize multiple different resolutions? So in the StoryMap Builder, we do provide different options to have alternative content if it's on videos to make sure you have performant applications. So having an understanding of where your users are coming from is really important. Again, coming to the story settings, we have this Analytics tab. Click Enable Analytics, and you can choose from either Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics. Set your tracking code, and then you can also put a full rich text content consent message, making sure you're compliant with GDPR and other regulations that are out there. Beyond just tracking general Google Analytic user tracking, we also send custom events for when users click on your buttons or your links within your story, and basic map interactions as well that you can read and digest how your readers are actually interacting with your story so you can optimize it for their reading experience. Number 2, you can tailor your reach of how users find your story, especially on sharing platforms, optimize for SEO, and optimize your story for templating for other users to see and start from your story as a template. So all this is done within our publishing modal. So you click Publish, And now you have a custom override for how users are going to see your card on Facebook or Twitter or other social media sites. So you can quickly edit this, add a custom thumbnail, summary, and title. So you can have your own title that you see in my content in ArcGIS Online, but have a different title for when you're sharing it publicly. Now, when you choose to share it publicly or to your organization, you get a couple additional advanced options that you can choose from. Allow duplication. So as an author, you always have the ability to duplicate your story, set different versions, maybe have a daily report that you can always start from. But allow duplication allows you to make your story into a template for other people. So anyone that can view your story can now have a duplicate option in the viewer header, so they can start from what you've already created. And then we have the second one, show in web search results. So this is an important tag that if you want to optimize, especially for embedding your story into other websites, and you want to make sure all the traffic goes to the parent website that has the additional context for your story. Because StoryMaps as a platform has really good SEO, we found a lot of times that when you publish your story, Google is actually raising our StoryMaps above your parent embed website. So this is a way to decrease that optimization on the actual story itself, so all the traffic goes to your original parent website. All right, number one. This is my favorite because I'm a developer, and we write docs a lot of times, and who wants to sit there with a rich text editor clicking buttons? I love using my keyboard. I love writing Markdown, and so this is the quick one that I love. You don't have to go in and highlight your text and use this dropdown every time. All your normal Markdown shortcuts that you'd expect are here. I still have my bold and italic and font sizes. I can create large, large paragraphs for emphasis. I can bring that back down to a normal paragraph with some simple shortcuts. I have my number icons, or number lists and bullet lists. And we can do quotes. So most recently, we've also added a new enhancement to our quote block, which you can see here. We can have a quote attribution, so it shows up nice as you'd expect. So if you ever are wondering what those keyboard shortcuts are, just come to our little help menu here, and you can open up and see all the shortcuts that we have available for you. All right. So in addition to builder applications, we also have the ability to have URL parameters that we want you to know about. There's different workflows that you might have in your organization, whether you want to start from a web map and have a daily report that always shows the same web map or a different web map each day. You can use those URL parameters to create one. Or maybe you have an organization that you want to force your authors to always use the same theme. Instead of requiring them to create a new story, open up the design panel, find your approved themes, click on the one approved theme that's there, you can have a create story link that embeds the theme ID into it. And as soon as you start your story, they're going to have the theme already automatically applied to that story. In addition to these create parameters, we also have some viewer parameters that allow you to show your story in special ways. First and foremost, if you have an organization that has maybe a single sign-on application where you don't want to expose just the generic ArcGIS Online username and password first, you want to make sure they point to the organizational login, you can add this URL key parameter to any link on the StoryMaps website, whether it's my content, if you have a workflow that they're going to do, the create story, or your story viewer or builder, wherever you need a login for. And that URL key is provided from your portal self. It's also the URL key for the ArcGIS Online URL. It's like urlkey.maps.arcgis.com. Whatever you set in your organization settings, you use that same key. And then when you launch your story, the first time it prompts for a login, it'll go directly to your organization login page, as opposed to using just the generic ArcGIS Online login. Two other URL parameters that you should know about: hiding story cover and hiding story header. This is a great way to create a standalone block, especially with our immersive, whether you want to have a standalone map tour, kind of a sidecar map journal style application. And I actually have an example of that later, how it looks, so you can see how that comes. But it's the same parameters that you can see for embed, but sometimes you don't want to just use it as an embed. You want to use it on its own, and so you can definitely do that. So we can take a look at how these work in person. So that web map URL parameter is the exact way that ArcGIS Online creates stories from the web map viewer. So I've got a simple favorite locations and Palm Springs web map. I'm going to create an application from this. Choose StoryMaps. And so now when I launch my story, I create a story builder. And it's going to launch me right here within the story builder, but automatically add that web map to my story. I'm ready to get started. And so you can reuse that same URL parameter on your own. Or maybe you want to create a standalone block. In this case, you want to have a dashboard on your screen that only highlights the locations. I don't need this extra scroll for the title here. So I can go and add those URL parameters, cover false, and header false. Reload the page. And now I have a standalone map tour that I can show on a screen. Maybe it's going to be on like a museum dashboard or something like that. You can have that right there, fully integrated into your application.
So how many of you knew this? Because the number one thing we ask is, how can I get a single block in my story? I don't want the header, I don't want the thing, right? Well, if you think from a user's perspective, we think they're going to get lost if you just show them something like a map. They don't know the context. But there are use cases where the context is useful. Maybe you're putting it somewhere else. Maybe it's part of some other presentation. Maybe you've already set the context. So that's why these are the parameters that he's talking about.
Yeah.
So he added a map. He took away the cover and he took away the header. So essentially, you're getting a single block story. We don't advertise it, but since you guys are here, let me know.
And so your header's still there, your cover's still there. If you wanted to share this on your social media site, you still have the SEO optimization. But when they come to it, you still have the nice UI for it. All right, let's go a little bit more complex. I want to do a crowdsource story map. How do I actually do that? Well, we've got the power of the map tour interface that we just saw to create a really great experience for exploring points. But Survey123 is a really great application for crowdsourcing and collecting data. Got a simple example here. I have a summer vacations photo contest that I want to do. It's a couple simple fields, but you're also going to notice here I've got some hidden fields. Survey123 has the power of adding calculated fields. So whether I want to extract data from the location, like I want to automatically pull the city and the country code from the location point that I had. Or the other thing we use calculated fields for is this description. So when you bring a feature service in to drive a map tour, it's called a data-driven map tour workflow, we give you the option to have a single description field. And so if you want to have a complex description, maybe you want to format it with multiple paragraphs, or you've got, in this case, we're going to have a simple description that also then has a field for a photo credit as well as where the photo was taken. So I can add a rich text field just by writing HTML, bringing in those additional calculated fields for where the location was taken, the category that it was. So it's a really powerful tool in Survey123, so I encourage you to use the other platforms. And we're going to show you how we integrate with the entire ArcGIS platform to create more powerful stories. So as they come, I'm going to create a new story. Start in my content, create new. And so the first thing we want to do is add that map tour. In this case, instead of starting from scratch, I'm going to start with a feature service. And I'll choose the feature service that Survey123 created on my behalf. And I've got a couple example photos in here already. We try to match up titles and descriptions automatically. We don't always get it right. Sometimes you've named your description field something really complicated, or we just find the first text field. So we've got some advanced options you can choose from. In this case, my place title I want to use for where you went on vacation, and place description, I'm going to use that rich text description field that I created. So now you can see I've got that rich text field. I have the nice description. I've got some kind of templated out little fields here with photo credits and where the category that it was in. And some additional advanced options that you might be interested in. You can either choose to fill the image so you have a nice cropped image all the time. But in this case, because I have a photo contest, I want to highlight the entire photo. I'll fit it. You can choose how many photos you want to share. Sometimes you're collecting data and they have multiple photos associated with each feature. So you can choose to limit that or add a scrolling gallery through it. Making sure we have accessibility and attribution credits there. So if you have a field in your feature service for those accessible content, you can add that. Adding filters to see how many points you want to show on the map at once, making sure it's either not too complicated or you want to show a large number of points. And sometimes it's important, you don't know who's going to contribute to your survey, and maybe they forgot to add a photo. You can automatically filter out all points that don't have media associated with it, so you make sure you have a nice looking story. And then you can choose to sort the latest points or a curated set of points, so you have full control over what points are shown, even though it's data-driven and it's going to be live on the fly. There's also a use case where you're creating a data-driven map tour, where maybe you're not uploading images as part of the feature service attachments because your organization forces you to create all your media and put it on your own content management system. In this case, if you have a field for an image URL on another server, you can use an image URL field to drive the media attachments here. All right, so we've got our story ready to go. Now we need the crowdsourcing aspect to it. So down here, I'm going to come back and grab that survey URL. And I'm going to paste it. Now you saw that survey 123 had kind of a simplified theme to it. Maybe it doesn't match my survey theme. We added something new in this last year to make it a lot simpler for you to integrate survey 123s into ArcGIS StoryMaps. When you add your survey, we're automatically going to apply the custom theme that you have applied to your survey to the survey 123, or from the story to the survey 123. And we're going to fit it to your survey so there's no scroll bars, right? So whether I come in here later on and change my custom theme, your survey automatically, you don't have to go back to the survey 123 design field, find the exact colors you're using. We're just going to take care of that for you. So this is great. These are some of those custom tools we're talking about of, I have a custom application. It's not really exposed as a builder interface, but we want to give you the ability to create enhanced applications, enhanced embeds as a developer to give you the power. So let's talk about some of those embed block tips that we do have. First and foremost is that sizing aspect. By default, we're going to try to do our best to size your application depending on the type of content. Our embed block is actually one of our most complex blocks within our application. It goes through hundreds of different checks to make sure we can know what type of content it is. Is it a video? Is it a photo? Is it going to work well on a smartphone so we can keep it open and live for the smartphone user? Or is it going to be a complex dashboard or other charting library that's going to run very difficult on a phone? So we want to collapse that down to have alternative image or card aspects that would actually be optimized for that user. Or maybe you have different sizes of your embed. By default, we'll use a 16:9 because that's the display of most screens that we display the embed at. But that doesn't always work. Maybe you have an audio player that's always going to fit the screen. Or maybe you have a custom size that you want to do. Or maybe you don't know the size of your application until it loads within the builder itself. So as an application developer, we do have a post-message API that you can use. A lot of third-party media providers, such as Twitter, YouTube, GitHub GIS, and all those, automatically use this post-message API that we provide. It's a common post-message API across multiple services. So if you were developing an application and embedding your embed both in StoryMaps or, say, Notion or other Medium or other sites, the same post message API would apply. The browser's post message API is a secure way to communicate from one website on one domain to another website on another domain, as long as you have the reference point. Usually, you have to be on the same domain to actually have access to the other users, the other window object. But with post message, you can just reference and say, hey, I'm sending you a message. And then as the parent application, I actually have to set up a way to receive that message, handle it in a secure fashion, and act upon it. And then I can send you a message back, and you can then receive that back. So that's how that post message API works. So in this case, I have the window object of the parent, or my window object that I find my parent reference, so the iframe parent. And I'm going to send a message. And in this case, I'm just sending, hey, this is the URL I'm sending the message from, because on our side, we want to make sure we're only getting, to keep our users secure, we're only getting messages from the iframes that we expect it from. We have the iframe resize. This is kind of the message we're listening for. And then you can send us the height of your content. We have a couple other iframe parameters that we listen for if you're embedding an iframe code. It's kind of a hidden, undocumented way to apply special displays for your embed that you can't do within the builder interface itself. So by default, when you embed your embed, you have an overlay that says you have to click on the embed before you can actually interact with it. And so this is really important for our users because the content is a scrolling story. If you were to land and the mouse accidentally lands over the embed, as you start scrolling, if your embed then requires a scroll, or maybe it's a map that has the scroll navigation turned on, now your user's stuck over that embed. And so that's the reason we apply that interaction lock. However, not every embed has that. Maybe you have an interactive chart that there's no scrolling, but you want immediate hover tips. So you can use this remove click to interact iframe parameter. That's something we will listen to and read from if you add it to your embed. It's kind of similar to the default browser sandbox or allow attributes. It's just a custom attribute that we look for that will automatically remove that interaction lock. We also have one for allowing the user to expand that iframe above the screen size. So by default, we think it's best that the iframe fits on the screen, that you can see the entire iframe at once. And so if a user had a short browser, we want to make sure they still see the entire embed, so we constrain it to the height. But this allows you to have a custom size, maybe you have a custom interaction with your iframe. If you're using the post message API, you don't have to worry about that. It's just if you're using the standard iframe height and width parameters that we're looking to size your content both correctly. And then I'll show you an example also how to actually control your iframe from within the story. So by using a hash parameter, when we detect it's the same URL except for a hash change, we won't actually reload the iframe. So that gives you a capability to send events and send controls to your iframe. Maybe you want to zoom in on a specific area, or maybe you have a workflow, you're actually scrolling through a form, and you want them to enter different content. You want to teach them how to fill out a form, fill out a website, do a workflow. You can scroll through your side panel, and when you get to a certain point, you can automatically change your application to that effect. So let's take a look at how some of those work. I will create a new story here. And start here, add an embed. So I'm going to add that remove click to interact so we can see it. And I'm going to move that height constraint false so we can see what happens. So by default, if I remove these height and width attributes, I get that nice 16:9 aspect ratio. We're going to fill the block size and allow you to make it bigger. Now you're going to see if I go one size bigger, it actually gets shorter. Oh, I removed the height constraint false, that's why. So that's if you remove your height constraint false, you can fit it all within there. Typically, if I were to embed it and didn't have that height constraint false, when I go big, you can see my aspect ratio now changes to make sure that always fits on screen. So that's kind of one of those ways to override that option. Another little trick, if you have a specific height, maybe you have a audio player that is always 200 pixels high, but you still want it to fill the entire screen size. If your width is 100% and your height is in pixels, we'll detect that and make sure we always apply that height parameter that you'd expect it to be. If your width is in the same units as your height, you can actually set a custom aspect ratio. And so now I have this 2:1 aspect ratio that no matter what size you put it at, will give you that nice resize. So if you have a custom display, maybe you have an example workflow where you're looking at the Empire State Building and you want to expand it but still keep it the full width of the page, you can do that. Last, let's look at that post message API. So in this case, I have a simple embed. As soon as that embed loaded, I sent a post message up to the parent StoryMaps. It read it and said, I'm a certain height, right? And it gave me that height. The browser automatically shrank to that size. But I'm not stuck at that one post message. I can change that post message at any time by adding content. And you can see now that embed block is going to continue to resize as I add or remove those contents. So this is really great. That's that survey 123 workflow. The survey 123 doesn't know how big the form is until it fully loads on the client, loads down the fields, and renders the survey. So as soon as it renders, it sends a height message up to us, and we fit it and take away all the scroll bars. So you get a really nice embed experience for the user. Okay, let's take a look at a way to control your embeds with those hash parameters. So in this case, it works in the side. You'll need to enter a sidecar, so you can actually have multiple different slides of different screens. So I'm going to add an embed. And now I've just got a simple URL that has a hash parameter on it. In this case, it's just apply a blue box in the first position. If I go now and add a new slide and paste the same URL, but update that hash, maybe I'll make it a green block, and I want to move it all the way to the right side of the screen. Or maybe I want to have a red block that fills the entire screen. I can click on any of these, and you can see now I can control that embed. So maybe I want to zoom on a piece of content or highlight something in a chart or do something like that. That's a really powerful way to actually control what's happening within the embed and have that cross interaction between the story and your custom content in the application. So Satya is now going to show a little bit more about how you can automate your stories with the Python API.
Cool. All right. Okay. Now let's switch gears and talk a little bit about Python. So I know most of you here are familiar with Python. So hopefully you've heard that ArcGIS API for Python actually supports the StoryMaps module. So what does that really mean? Is that if you're using ArcGIS API for Python, just like you automate lots of things using that, you can technically automate story maps. So what can we do? It's actually a programmatic experience for scripting, right? So this is what I was telling. StoryMaps itself is a no-code platform. If you use the builder, if you come to the viewer, if you use the website. However, there are lots of hooks like what we just saw, right? These are some of the tips that Stephen showed. Where you could do a lot of things in the URL. Similarly, using Python, you could do a lot of things. And if you actually see here, it actually, the content creation and management aspects is what this is very useful for. You can think of many use cases. I've just listed a couple here. It's really, I mean, the possibilities are endless. If for any reason you want to create a story map, by story map you mean, I mean stories, collections, briefings, anything like that, then this is your thing. Or you can update it. You don't have to essentially create it to update it. You can update an existing one too. So I'm going to show you a few examples of that. All right. So this is a very useful automation technique that some of our clients are already using, but if you're not aware, then you should be aware of this. So what's available today is the 2.2.0, which supports the output type stories, right? You can create a story, you can add and edit lots of blocks, maps, media, immersives. You can pretty much construct a very powerful story map just by using the Python API way of doing it. You can copy content blocks, you can duplicate, you can move blocks, you can save, publish, or share, right? You can do all that today. What's coming up, and we have already been beta testing it behind the scenes, is in April, the Python API will also support the briefings output type and the collections output type. So in April, you will be pretty much able to script anything that StoryMaps actually produces, right? And we believe this is a great addition. On top of it, since StoryMaps moves so fast in terms of releases, we release every 2 weeks, right? The other teams at Esri are catching up. So the Python team is now supporting, or the Python API is now supporting the code block and the table block that we already have in the story. So these updates are coming. It'll be out pretty soon. So let's actually see a use case, okay? So here is a simple use case I want to show. Well, it's not really simple, but you get the idea. So here is a PDF. I just went to Esri.com and just picked up a PDF, okay? This is not made for the demo, just a random PDF I just picked up. And if you see here, this is a PDF. Well, we are StoryMaps. We don't use PDFs, right? So how do you take something in the PDF and automate it and create it into a story map? This is a common question we get. In fact, Stephen was telling me in this conference itself, we had many questions like that. Well, is there something in the builder that I can do? Probably not. We have not given you an import PDF button. We have not done it. Maybe in the future, but not right now. But now what is the best option for you? Well, let's automate this. So how can we do this? We have the Python API, isn't it? So let me actually now shift to a different browser. Don't get scared that I'm going to run Python in a browser, but you can, all right? So right now what I have is I have a Docker container, right? Don't worry about it. Just a way to run, some of my dev tools. And inside my inside my Docker container, I actually have installed the Python API modules that I need, okay? And it's running. It's running under something called as a notebook, Jupyter Notebook. Have you guys heard of Jupyter Notebook? Yes? Most of the Python developers have heard it. It's an easy way to run certain scripts on the web, right? Where you're actually running a local server running it. Now let's actually come to this stories over here. If I come to my stories over here, I don't have any story in my account right now, okay? Just to show you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up this demo Python notebook, and what it really does is it creates a template. So let me actually go ahead and start running this step. Here we initialize all the required stuff, and then we actually get the API, and then what we do is we actually set up some placeholders. Again, this is done by a developer, okay? You could do whatever you want. This is just an example. This is one way to do it. And then you actually set up the story, you set up the title, you set up certain values, and then we can add some of these blocks, and then we actually create a story, and then we actually save the story. So this is what we do behind the scenes. And if you see here in this Python notebook, it says a story map was created via Python. This is the title that they have given. So what's going to happen over here? If I come back and actually refresh my screen, there you go. A story map was actually created. A story was created. What was created in that story? Now, let's actually take a look. If you see here, it actually created the sort of the template that I wanted my story to follow. Again, this is what the developer has done. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it anyway. What they've done is they've created a template. They've put some placeholders. It says that here, substitute this with a case study, substitute this with an image, substitute this with a title or a table with a quote, what they did. You guys get the idea? Now, suppose I'm just running it in the same notebook, but you could actually run it in different one. Just imagine that you had like 20 PDFs and you have to go through this and all the PDFs are looking similar. This is a good way to do it. Now let me actually run through the left. So the next set of things is it's going to now start substituting. It's going to open up that, in this step, it's actually opening up that PDF I just showed you, right? It is extracting all the information from that PDF using a PDF scraping library. There's a lot that's available. And then what it's going to do is, it's going to go to my existing story content over here, and then it's going to start replacing all that, and then it's going to save it. So what do you think should happen right now? Well, we actually took a PDF, we actually read through the PDF for the parts I want, using some library in Python. We grabbed all the things that we want. Now we are going back to the story, and instead of constructing the story from scratch, because I had put some placeholders, I'm just going to go and replace it. Well, it so happens that if I come and probably refresh this story, what you're going to see is this. Did you just see what happened? Right? Let me just go back to this. This was the PDF, right? And we actually scanned this PDF, or actually grabbed this information, took all of these things, including the table, text, the quote block, the paragraphs. There you go, magic, isn't it? Do you guys like this? Yeah, there you go. And then now, the rest of the story map continues. Go for it, right? Change the design, add more stuff into it, create it into a template inside of StoryMaps itself, and share it to the organization, repeat. We have organizations doing this 3,000-4,000 stories a day. They run it nightly. You know what's a simple thing they do? They update the dates, they update something else. Let me show you a different use case. If this was exciting, this is even more exciting. So let me actually come back over here and let me show you something new that's coming, which is automating the briefings. Let me just actually delete this. Okay. All right. I'll show you one other demo, and hopefully we can actually get it here. So in this demo, what's going to happen is, see, I don't have any, I just have this briefing in my account right now. So I'm going to create a daily template. I'm going to create a briefing for a daily brief. Okay, so daily brief is used in many organizations. In this case, we are using sort of weather events as an example. Every day the weather changes, right? You would want to come back and update your story. What is your current option right now? Well, it's easy, right? You just come to the story, you duplicate a story, you change the information, and then do it. But a person has to be involved in it. But can we automate that? Well, I don't want to create a new story every time. I just want to update one slide in a story or one part of the story. Can I actually do that? Well, you can, right? This is the Python API over here. So I'm going to actually run this whole thing now, just to save time. And it's actually going to go and do some of these stuff. It's going to go and create slides in my template. It's going to actually go and create, there you go. It's actually running this. And then, so once I'm actually done with this, it's going to create a graph. It's creating an image. It's creating a web map. Then I get my briefing over here, right? Are you guys seeing the briefing at the bottom? A briefing got created. So now if I actually come back over here and actually refresh, what I have is I have these daily weather operations. So let me actually open that briefing right now. And then what you're going to see here is this entire briefing was actually created using Python, right? Which is great, which is similar to what we saw in the story. But it looks like a story. It looks like a briefing because it was just scripted. It's got the title, it's got the image, it's got a link here, and it's got a map. By the way, we added an entire map also, right? It was all scripted. This is a real map, right? Not a screenshot. And it has all the pop-ups and everything. And then we also have one more map over here, and then we have highlights of day one. Let's example that the weather event has changed. It's few hours has passed and we want to update this slide deck, or we want to update this briefing because it's not the current briefing anymore, right? It's been updated. So what can we do about it? Well, just go back to the API, and then here I have a different one called update. So I'm going to actually run this update now. So the only thing it needs to know is which one should I update? Well, let me just copy this because this is the one I just created. So I'm going to come back to the update over here and then actually say update this, right? And I'm going to actually let it run. Well, let's actually start from the beginning. So I'm going to actually let it run, and if you see here, what's going to happen is it's going to go there and it's going to change some of the titles, some of the images, and then it's also adding a link to one of my slides. Okay, I'll just show you what's happening right now. So it says it's updated. So if I actually come over here and let me see if I can actually load it again. So just watch what happens, okay? You ready? There you go. It was a nice weather, now there's a tornado. Did you guys get the difference? Right? We changed the title, we also changed the time it was updated. Not only that, we didn't change anything in this slide because we didn't write the code for it, neither in this slide. However, in this particular slide, previously you just had this and some text. Now we have added there was a tornado advisory. And we have used something new in briefings called attachment links. And if you actually click on this, it actually opens an entire website for you inside the briefing itself. And this is the brief that was actually published as part of their website. I'm sure you've seen pictures like this, right? So just imagine the power of this, right? So now all the power of StoryMaps and the simplicity of it, the beauty of it, and the flexibility it has is now actually available to you as a developer without having to install anything, download and set up anything. If you already have ArcGIS Python API, you're good to go. If you know the StoryMap URLs and how to manipulate that, you're pretty much good to go. You can put stuff into the StoryMaps in a clever way. In fact, you can even take the entire StoryMap and put it in somewhere else in a more cleverer way that we're going to show right now after this. But you guys get the idea? You guys liking it? So expect more of this. There's going to be a lot more things getting added to the Python API. If there is a developer session for StoryMaps, please attend. Because in our product side, we are still a no-code platform. Okay? We are not a developer product. However, we are developers, we love developers, so we are creating this other way that you could actually, it's a very different approach if you think about it. The main UI doesn't have any developer tools, and it's extremely approachable. But on the side, we have an extremely powerful way of getting to it, right? So we want you guys to create a lot more stories and have fun, both on the web and also as a developer. Okay? If you're looking for feedback, I'll pass it back to Stephen. Do we have time? Probably we need to rush through a little bit, but...
All right, we'll go quickly. So that was everything you can do today. And we just want to give you a little sneak peek about what's coming. One, so we can get your feedback about what you actually want us to build. How do we expand our applications in a way that supports developers from that no code on the front end builder, but a lot of power from custom application developers or developers that want to automate their stories. So first up, coming next week in our next week release, we're adding that embed block hash control that I already showed and the ability to remove the height constraint. One more feature is this media actions. So for a while we had map actions. So you have a map here, you can zoom in, and we now rename this map actions. So maybe I want to change this to where I'm going to showcase the hiking trail I want to go on. But it's not just me going on a hike. I want to go with my favorite hiking companion. So instead of just adding map interactions, I can change out to add an image. And of course, we want to talk about some good talking points. So we'll add another embed here.
Are you guys realizing what we're showing? This is huge. This is media actions. Entire sidecars can contain alternate content now as you click, right? This is big.
And just something to showcase, so all these act as toggle buttons. So as I click on one, click it back, I get that nice toggle. We also have, if you just add a media action that has no action set, that acts as a reset button for you. So we built that in. It's a way to add a little bit more user-friendly interface for your readers. All right, but let's get to some fun stuff. Give you a sneak peek of what's coming, what we're kind of thinking about. So right now you can embed StoryMaps as a iframe. This is a great way to fit it wherever you want. It's got full sandboxing of security settings, that kind of stuff. However, we know there's a lot of use cases where, because we're hosted on ArcGIS StoryMaps, because we have a lot of users, because it's on our domain, we can't allow you to do everything we want. We can't allow you to run your custom scripts. We can't allow you to write custom CSS. Google Analytics Tag Manner that injects custom scripts, just it doesn't work well when it's on our full platform. So what we're thinking about is building a way to embed your stories as a script, style embed. So how that might work is just like sorry, it's a little small here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Maybe it won't let me. But basically, I'm going to add a div, just like if you're creating a map, you add where you want that embed to go. And then I'm going to just add that script tag. So now over here, you're going to see I have a fully loaded story loaded into a CodePen. And if you're noticing this, I'm actually using a story for this workflow. I've got those custom code blocks. It's a way to work through that workflow. That hash parameters, that URL is not changing, so I can go to the next section. That CodePen's still there. OK, so I've got my custom story, but maybe I want to add my custom header to it. So let's add that header. And we're going to go here and add some custom CSS to style that header how I'd expect it to look.
Hey, Stephen, I'm getting confused now. Are you developing StoryMap, showing the code within StoryMaps inside of a sidecar?
That's right.
So is this your new IDE? Is this how you work?
You know, sometimes.
But are you guys realizing what is happening here? He's using a sidecar. There is 2 code blocks. He has embedded a CodePen. He's copying from the code block, putting it inside of a CodePen, executing the code inside the CodePen, all inside a StoryMap. Are you guys still with me? Well, this is the power of how we are actually developing it, right? This is just scratching the surface, right? You're going to see a lot more things like that coming up. So follow our blogs and so read up on our user community and ask questions. We'll be able to help you. But then again, you continue, Stephen. I really got excited.
Yeah. So because the StoryMap is not sandboxed into an iframe, it's fully written onto the HTML document, I now have control over everything within that story, right? So just as a simple example, maybe I want to have a custom style for my header, right? Maybe I want to add my organization fonts that, because of licensing restrictions and custom scripts that require custom fonts to load, we can't allow. But now you can add that to your own story. Or have custom analytics, or maybe you want to have custom CSS or other custom scripts and events that run when your story loads, when you get to a certain section. Maybe you want an overlay for a disclaimer for your story. All those are now possible with the script embed we're thinking about. But we're showing you this early because we want to get your feedback. How do you actually want to use this? Do you want to use it as a web component? Do you want to have it as a downloadable HTML page that you can just use a simple story, but have your own custom domain behind it? How do you actually want to use it? So give us some feedback. There's a feedback link on the session links, or in the header of the story viewer. Give us some feedback there, or just let us know after the session. Now, one other thing that we're kind of using in-house that we want to give you a quick demo to see if this is something that would actually be useful to you is we have a StoryMap inspector. You might have seen this little arrow kind of hiding out on all our stories. So when I click on this, now I've got some additional information about the story. I can preview all the published data behind this story. This is what the story configuration JSON looks like. All your content, all your text, right? You can see the whole data structure behind it. Or you want to explore the item resources. You want to see who created each item resource, when they created the item resources. How many do you have? Do you want to know how many blocks or have a little bit additional information around your story? We kind of give you a summary of what's in there so you can know, do I have maps so I need to investigate to see if they're still sharing appropriately? Is my score complete list to be published correctly? Do I have enough metadata behind it? So these are some of the things we're using in-house. A lot of times we're using this to create a simple builder interface that we can reuse as we're developing new blocks, that we can inspect and debug stories when there's issues, and help you explore. But is this something that's useful for you? Let us know. There's one other really useful tool that we find as developers. You can see as I press the Option key, I now get this little added interface. I can click on it. I can see just the information for that block. I can edit the block. Maybe I want to change the summary. Story reloads, and the content's updated without even using a builder interface. So it kind of gives you that developer's perspective without having the Python API, allow you to tweak a few things, have some additional control over maybe some hidden features if you're familiar with our data model. So that's what we have today. We'd love to
right on time.
Answer any questions if you have anything. And I know I don't want to keep you from the closing session, but we'll stick around for a couple minutes if there are any. And we'd appreciate it if you also fill out the survey as well.
Yeah, hope you guys liked it. Again, StoryMap's not a developer product, but still we have built a lot of developer-friendly features that if you're aware of it, you can take advantage. The last two that we have shown, which is the StoryMaps Inspector and the script embed, it's still under works. So if you're interested, please get in touch. We can give you some early beta access. But the rest of it we have shown is available to you. So if you know about it, you can use it. I hope this was useful. Right? Hope you guys can take it back and start playing around with it. Again, we would love you to use the builder and the beautiful interfaces that we have built. That's 90% use case and maybe 95% use case. But in case you're a developer and you're tasked to work with StoryMaps and you're actually asked to automate it or change it or update it or even just try to understand. By the way, we are an extremely high-end engineering stack behind the scenes. This is all built on React.js and Next.js and JSX and hosted on AWS with all the serverless architecture. And as I told you, we scaled 4 or 5 billion views, and this is not a simple thing that we build and run. And in fact, it's full SSR, which is server-side rendered, and hence we get the SEO rankings and stuff. So this is a very high-end stack that we're working on. In fact, Stephen and Quan over here gave a talk about that, I think on Thursday, that was yesterday, about how we built it. So that's also a good one to understand the complexity of it. Think of StoryMaps like an iceberg, right? So we want you to get on the ship, take a picture, and pose behind it and come back. But there's lots of complexity under the hood, right? So as long as you're at a distance, it looks beautiful and it's everything. But behind the scenes, it's quite an engineering task to build this and to run it at the speed and scale. And we are distributed worldwide, right? Not just in US. And we give this kind of experience and sub-second responses anywhere in the world, and people like us for it, right? In fact, in many agencies and companies, StoryMaps is becoming their website, right? They're using this as their front-facing things because they can take the load, we can actually work on the number of requests, we can actually deliver the performance that they're looking for. Oh, by the way, we are extremely proud of our mobile views. I don't know whether you guys have noticed it or not. I mean, StoryMaps looks so good on mobile. By the way, we've gotten feedback that sometimes it looks better on mobile than on the web, right? And we are happy with that feedback. We work very hard on that, and we make sure our designs look great and work great on mobile phones or any form factor. So we hope you continue to use StoryMaps, encourage us, give us feedback, and if you have any questions, we'll be here to answer it. Thank you. Thank you for attending.